I started my business in Hertfordshire at the bottom of the last recession when I lived over in Bushy Heath. So I understand some of the issues that you're facing at the moment. And so it's actually a real privilege to have the chance in government to try and make things a little bit easier. Now, we've been in office for about a year, and Sandra's highlighted some important challenges that you've got, and I'll come to those in a moment. But let me start by trying to say to you what we felt we had to do at the beginning and how it, I hope, will help your bottom line. Because in my book, one of my key jobs is to try and make it easier for you to start, try and make it easier for you to grow, try and make it easier to access finance and invest in a small business, whatever the nature of that business may be. And so my view is that with startups, we want to make sure that some of those barriers that hold people back, that put people off, are actually removed. Classic one I had in Bushy Heath when I was starting out was, how can I turn my business into a company? In those days, it was a 20-page form. You had to send away for it. You had to take it to the relevant office in government, and then actually you paid a fee for that. It took 2, 3, 4 weeks sometime. Now, we've decided to make this online. You can access it from home, from your laptop. Very often, most of us start our businesses at home, in the back room, whatever. And we want to make sure that we strip down the number of pages, and you can do it in 2 hours. That's the test I've asked the civil servants, that you can incorporate your business in 2 hours from home, £18. Now, to anybody who's never run a business, that sounds like small beer. But actually, it's important. Because once we start to change the mindset of people in Whitehall and indeed local government, that we need to think about it from your point of view. How much time does it take? What does it cost? How easy is it to do this process? Then we start to change the way Westminster and Whitehall work. And Sandra's quite right. You know, I'm shocked by the lack of experience across all political parties in terms of actually knowing what it's like to run a small business. And she's also absolutely right to say that in Whitehall, the assumption is that a small business is about 100 people. You know that isn't the case. I know that isn't the case. And that's why in the first couple of weeks, I made myself not wholly popular, but I said to my civil servants who are focused in the small business team, right, how many here have actually worked in a small business? 2 or 3 hands did go up, which was good. So I said, what we're going to do is I want each of you to spend a week in a small business, and I'm going to do it as well. And over the last year, I spent a working day in 5 different businesses, 2 in my own constituency, 1 in Hertford, 1 in Bishop Stortford, to remind myself of those lessons about time is money, cash is king, that actually you have to juggle all the time, but also to get the civil servants to understand that if you work in a small business, there's no department to deal with something. You have to deal with it. You have to use your time. And it's been an eye-opener for them. And I am now pushing with the Prime Minister and others that we have 100, maybe 200 senior civil servants and politicians doing this each and every year. We need to change the culture and not just the policies. So starting up, crucial. But what about investing? Well, you quite regularly raise with me, individually in my own constituency, but also nationally, the question of access to finance. And it's a real problem. You know, we start from a point where back 2 or 3 years ago, people frankly were lending and borrowing when they should never have been doing either of those things on terms that frankly were completely unsustainable. We don't want to go back to that point. But I know from talking to many of you that you are very anxious, indeed have lost the trust of some of our banks. And I can see why from some of the letters and examples I've had that Andrew and the team at the Federation present to me. And that's why we have said to them, right, we want a clear commitment. And not only that, we want a lending code of practice that you sign up to and an appeals process. So for the first time ever, you've got a chance when there's an unreasonable action by a bank against you to actually challenge that and make sure that actually you have a process that you can use that they have signed up to, that we can hold them to account on. Now, the key in that is remembering, as I certainly learned in my sort of first couple of years, that of course, if you're the small business, you're the customer. Not the bank, you're the customer. And our big problem has been that, yes, they're more risk averse, but they've stripped out their ability to understand the local business by removing many of those bank managers who know the area, know the business, know the people you trade with. So they become blind in their ability to judge good businesses from bad. And that's a real weakness for them. And that's why we're looking to make sure that we open this market up, get new players into the field, So you don't just have, in reality, a choice of 3, maybe 4 pretty similar businesses, banks on the high street, but actually we start to see 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different players. So you have choice. And like in any marketplace, if you've got choice, you have the power, not the supplier, not the bank. But there's more in this field, which I think is important. We have made sure that we've put out a loan guarantee in the form of the enterprise finance guarantee to underpin some of that banking. They're taking it up in part, not in whole, but overall the reality is that about 3/4 of small businesses who go to get a loan now get the loan they ask for from their bank. Now I know that if you're the other quarter, that's not a lot of consolation to you. And that's why getting that competition right, underpinning the bank lending that they're doing, and also making sure we support things like business angels, expanding as well as some of the venture capital as you grow to get a mid-cap level, that those are important. So you've got a choice. So I understand about that need to get that investment side right. But what about growing? Now, Sandra's mentioned a couple of issues here about how you take on that first member of staff. And it's a big jump. You know, when you're a sole trader to start with and you make do, but you get to a certain point where actually you need to think about taking on that first employee, it's a problem. It's a worry. Will they be the right person? Will they fit in? Is this somebody who actually is going to add, or what happens if it doesn't work out? What happens if actually this is something that I'm going to need to get out of in a year, 18 months' time? What will the law allow me to do? Well, we've come to 2 issues here which we think are important. First of all, the balance between the rights of the employee and the employer, particularly for the small business, have gone too far. And that's why, particularly around the issue of tribunals, which is what most small business owners talk to us that they fear the most, is actually needs to be shifted. We've seen far too many repeat cases of individuals who arrive in your business, they have a nice CV, they appear to be fine, they start work with you, and then it's clear they're not performing, and so you have an interview with them, a discussion with them, and then they go off with stress. And then before you know where you are, there's a discrimination case, and so on. And so you're running a business, time is money, you settle on the steps of the tribunal because, frankly, the cost of employing a lawyer outweighs the challenge of doing it. That's the practical problem you cite to us. And what we're finding is that many of those individuals involved in some of those vexatious claims are repeat offenders. They're on their 3rd or 4th business. And why? Because the rules were changed a few years ago, where you used to have to work for 2 years before you could actually claim discrimination or employment, and they pulled it down to 1. So it's quite easy to be able to move from 1 year, one business to the next. And that's why we are looking to take that back to 2 years, to nip that in the bud, and to stop that problem for people like yourselves. But we want to go a step further. Ed Davey, who's my colleague who deals with employment relations, is looking at a comprehensive employment law review, one, to see where a lot of the law that's built up over the years, and not just under the last government, over the last 20 or 30 years, has just, rather like barnacles on the bottom of a ship, just incrementally built up more and more complex processes. He's going right the way through it. What we're looking to do is to set out later this summer a plan and proper and comprehensive employment law review, which deals with some of the issues which, on Monday, the Federation actually raised in its employment relations bill, around the practicalities, around the paperwork, around the contradictory way in which different policies don't help you, all of which deter a business owner from thinking about taking on that first employee. But we think there's another area which is important, and that's reforming the way in which business support from government works. I'm a big believer in the mentoring program, where real business people mentor others. And in fact, when I was running my business in Bushy Heath, I was able to be part of the Hertfordshire Prince's Trust that helped young people in this area and elsewhere actually start their business. And I think mentoring is great because you can choose the person that's right for you. And most importantly, you're able to get the practical advice about that barrier you've come to. Not a whole panoply of documents that you have to wade through, but when you get to a problem, how do I sort out maybe a new partner? Do I incorporate? What about talking to maybe talking to a new partner, a new marketplace? You can talk to your mentor who can help you find the answer, or who themselves has been there already and can take you through it on a practical basis. And that's why on Monday we'll be launching at the and paid for, I have to say, by the British Bankers Association, a mentoring program which the Federation are very actively engaged in, which is all about expanding substantially. And I won't give you the number tonight, because if I give you the number tonight, I shall be told off because I should have given it to you people on Monday. But it's a big number of business mentors who are going to be available to help you grow your business. And that's crucial, especially on things like taking on that first employee. But we need to do more in this field, and that's why we're dealing with red tape in two regards. One, deal with the stock that's already there. We came up with a really frightening number of pieces of law in this country. 21,000. Now, some days it feels like that, doesn't it? But the reality is that a lot of that is very historic, and some of it needs to be stripped away or simplified. So we've run up this thing called the Red Tape Challenge. It's online. You can see it yourselves. And subject by subject, market by market, retail, hospitality, etc., we're working through those laws and listening to what people are saying, not just the big lobby groups in Whitehall, but individuals across the country about what needs to be got rid of, what can be simplified, what can be merged, what frankly we never needed in the first place. And we are working our way through it, and we'll be saying a lot more about that first tranche in a couple of weeks' time, where we are really going to be looking at getting rid of existing laws that waste your time. And I think that's an important point. But of course, there's a flow of new stuff coming through. A bit of it from Brussels, quite a lot of it from the UK. So we set a rule for ministers that really is how you work, which is you have to face the whole burden, Sandra was rightly pointing out. It's you as an individual who have to deal with everything from employment law to health and safety, the whole gamut. You have to be an expert in it all. So we're saying to ministers, okay, you can't bring forward a new piece of legislation unless you show us that you're able to reduce or remove an existing piece of law at the same cost. In other words, no net additional cost from you. You need to show why you need to regulate. What it does is it forces Whitehall to think about the whole picture, not just that little piece of legislation they're focused on. What you have to deal with, it's time they did as well. In our first 6 months, our first stab at this, we took 157 measures, which Whitehall talked about, they wanted to bring forward, cut it to 46. Only 11 of those, that's not 11, only 11 of those actually are going to cost business anything. Some of the other ones actually reduce costs. That's great, that's fine, happy with that. But it's a remorseless exercise, you know that, because it's a remorseless exercise for you. And the reason why you don't just do this instantly is because we have to change a culture. It's a culture in which passing a law is seen to be the right thing to do to stop a harm. You know, you see it in the newspapers every day. Something goes wrong, and up comes the cry, something must be done. You must pass a law, you must ban this, you must stop that. And what they forget about is very often the small businesses who pick up the tab. So that battle is a constant battle. And I'm working with the Cabinet Office, so we work across the whole of Whitehall. We lose a few, but we're winning quite a lot now. And in a funny sense, I get frustrated because the things I stop from happening, you don't see. And so what I regard as being something proud, actually, I stopped that. 100 million will never be on your, never even worry your time in terms of business costs. You don't see. So it's quite a frustrating job to do in a way, because some of the things that didn't happen, that you don't know about, you know, that were coming down the train and coming down the tracks, as it were, are things that we have had successes in. But there are some good ones to point to. Talked about training, very important. You know the value of training, but you don't need a whole new hideous process, which Whitehall was planning, called the right to train under the actually the last government's proposals, which we were looking as to whether we should implement, would have cost SMEs £350 million to put this new administrative process in, whereby all we would have been doing would have been recording what many of you do anyway. Why? So we've scrapped it. Now that's a classic example of something you haven't had to face, which probably therefore you'll feel isn't necessarily quite as scintillating and exciting, but actually is important. Because stopping that burden, that train of regulation is crucial. Anyway, setting up business in Hertfordshire is, as you'll have gathered, because I ran mine for 10 years, something I heartily recommend. It's a bit thrilling, it's a bit frightening at times when you make that first step to start a business. And what I'm trying to do across the government, and I have very good support from my colleagues, is to make sure that we do make it easier to start, easier to access finance, a battle yet to be won, but we're getting there, and easier to grow. And I hope that in forming the new branch in Hertfordshire, we will be able to ensure that your voice is heard at County Hall, in our districts and boroughs here, but also at Whitehall as well. So I'm very happy, Pam, and to be able to come here tonight. I've given you a bit of a lecture, my apologies for that, keen to get the message out, but very happy to come and support what the Federation does. And I have to say to you that Andrew and the team nationally do keep pressing, do keep arguing the case. I won't be able to say yes every time. Money, as you know, is incredibly tight. There's far less than we would like there to be. We have to sort that out. But we are able to make good progress. And this country remains, in my view, one of the best places to start a business. But I want to make it better. So thank you very much for inviting me here this evening. And I'm very happy. I think we're going to take a few questions. Thank you.